For anybody that's watched college football longer than a couple of years, you know with each college football playoff ranking, there are always a ton of opinions and a ton of controversies. However, this set might be some of the worst, with the worst reckoning by college football playoff chairman Hunter Yurachek. Stick around. Let's chat about this. It's a mess. This is Way Offsides. 3, 2, let's go. Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. Welcome into Way Offsides. It's so good to see your smiling faces. Today, we're talking playoff rankings. Now, we all know that playoff rankings are pretty fluid. I usually don't do videos like this, breaking down rankings and picking on people and this and that, because usually it takes care of itself. But there's just some things in this week's college football playoff rankings, which came out last night, that are just so egregiously overlooked and unjustifiable that it's laughable. It's laughable, and it is obvious that there is no real metric, there's no real parameter for what the college football playoff committee deems whatever they deem. But if you're not an Alabama fan, you're watching this video. This video isn't just about Alabama. We're going to use Alabama for a lot of examples here. But this is about a few other teams too, who I think kind of got hosed yesterday in these rankings. Now, I want to start off by saying, look, you lose at FSU in week 1. That matters. Absolutely matters. That loss matters. But you have to decide at some point in time, does your strength of schedule outweigh a funky loss early in the season? We were all told that, yeah, strength of schedule was going to be very, very important this year. And I think that the college football playoff committee has reneged on that statement. And I'm going to show you why. Let's bring this up here. The top 25 came out yesterday. And we'll start with Alabama. Let's just start there. If you're not an Alabama fan, stick around. We're going to talk about some of these other teams. The top, 1 through 6, sure. Texas Tech, I think, might be a little bit suspect. Then we look down at Alabama at number 10. Alabama previously was number 4. You lose to a resurging Oklahoma team, who is now a top 10 team, who was number 11 when they came to Tuscaloosa. You lose by 2 off of 3 turnovers in that game. Now, I don't want to devalue that loss, because it was a loss. Was it a bad loss? It was bad for Alabama in the sense that they played poorly. However, you're talking about a top 10 loss, a team who also has the best win in the country in beating now number 4 Georgia, because the 3 teams in front of them are undefeated. Right. So you're basically putting Alabama on a bubble here. You're telling people that Alabama has to win out, which they should. They're a 2-loss team. They lost to FSU week 1 on the road. You lose at Oklahoma. We've kind of said, hey, look, Alabama had 1 to give. Well, now we're not so sure, because you have to take into account conference championships. Now, I know a lot of people in the comments are going to go, there's absolutely no way they'll leave out a conference champion or runner-up. Well, I wouldn't be too sure of that. And I'm going to tell you why. And I think that some of it is because this committee, heralded by what's his name, Hunter Yurachek, AD at Arkansas. No wonder Arkansas's athletic department is in general an entire mess. This guy is a moron, and we're going to tell you. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But the criteria, the justification that he used on the college football playoff reveal show last night was wacky, was absolutely wacky. So he brought up, well, Alabama looked great during that mid-game stretch. They beat Georgia, they beat Missouri, they beat Vanderbilt, they beat Tennessee. Okay, cool, sure. So why are they behind Notre Dame, who has played 2 ranked teams and lost to both of them? Um, so why is Alabama sitting behind Notre Dame? Well, he brought up the run game. He said Alabama, in a nutshell, he elaborated a little more, but Alabama hasn't run the ball well. If you look at that South Carolina game, they couldn't run the ball and they had to score late to win at South Carolina. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Texas A&M down to South Carolina 30-3 at home? Is it any less impressive? Right. And again, I really want to keep re-emphasizing. I understand that Alabama should be on the fringe with 2 losses. I get it. I don't disagree with that. We knew that was going to be the case if they lost another game. This is why I kept pointing at this Oklahoma game going, if they can lose, this is the one they can lose. Because if they were to go and lose the Iron Bowl, they definitely would be probably outside of the bubble. But all we want is some consistency in the thought process behind this, right? That's all anybody wants is just consistency. And whether a team can run the ball effectively has never been a metric for whether they should be in the college football playoff or not. It should come down to wins, losses, and strength of schedule or strength of record. Alabama has more top 25. There's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 teams on this graphic that you're looking at that Alabama has beat. One of which is the best win in all of college football this year at Georgia, at Missouri. So are you penalizing Alabama just based off of their losses? Or are you actually factoring in their wins? Because if you're telling me that, then if Alabama doesn't have 4 top 4 wins, they should be, down 18-19, right? But if that's the case, why is Notre Dame where they are? Why is BYU as high as they are? Why is Texas Tech? Well, because they're 1 loss. Yeah, but who have they beaten? So what is weighing more? Is it losses or is it wins? Because no other team can boast what Alabama's done this year in the win column. They have a really bad loss. Say what you want to about that Oklahoma game. I felt like the media overreacted to that, and that fed into some of this. Like, that was the Oklahoma game's not a bad loss for Alabama. It's not. Oklahoma's a top 10 team, probably, at least visually from what I've seen, the best overall defense in the country. Right. And they lose by 2 points at home after they pretty much fed them 14, 17 points on a silver platter. It's not to take away from anything Oklahoma did. Oklahoma's defense, Brent Venables had Ty Simpson in a blender almost that entire second half. However, a couple of small, minute things change. Alabama's still sitting at number 4 today. Or happened differently. Alabama's still sitting at number 4 today. There's no consistency in this. There's no consistency. There's too much human bias. There's definitely media bias, 100% media bias. If that was the case, no, they would bringing up Alabama's run game. Where do you hear that argument the most? Social media from Alabama fans, really. Right. Now let's look at some other things here. Okay. You've got Notre Dame, Miami. Now, I'm not a fan of either. I'm not. But why is Notre Dame ranked ahead of Miami? I don't want Miami to be up there with Notre Dame because that bumps Alabama back even more. But the head-to-head wins not matter. This guy literally got on TV and said that they've looked very hard at those 2 teams, and there's really no metric to determine who's got the worse, the better or worse loss is what he's trying to say. Yes, there is. They have a head to head. It doesn't make any sense, man. And again, if you want to leave Alabama out of the playoff if they lose the SEC championship game, that's your prerogative. You set a nasty precedent for the rest of college football if that happens, because the SEC is about to go to 9 conference game schedules, which you just told them that's a stupid move. You just told Greg Sankey and the entire SEC that's dumb because we don't care how good the teams are that you're beating. We care about how bad the teams are that you're losing to. And then they're not looking at head to heads. If they are, you can't justify what you've done with Miami and Notre Dame. A lot of people are, oh, well, it's Miami or it's Notre Dame. They want the brand in there. Miami's a good brand too. They're going to bring some money with them into the playoffs. Maybe not as historic as Notre Dame, but you could make an argument. Now, look, a lot of this is probably going to take care of itself, right? Somebody in the top 9, probably 2 people at least, are going to lose at some point over the next 2 weeks. That's going to happen. But then we have to ask ourselves, what happens if BYU wins their conference championship game and Alabama loses to Texas A&M in a close one? Does BYU jump them? This is why I kept telling, I got drugged for this, but I kept saying we should not be playing an SEC championship game. Not when our conference is the gauntlet that it is. These teams are cannibalizing themselves. We shouldn't be playing an extra game. For all of you traditionalists that are like, it's the SEC, it's just, and I know what players are saying, it's just as important as the national championship. No, it's not. No, it's not. Sure, could an SEC championship catapult somebody into the playoff field? It sure can, but it's much more likely that it's going to keep somebody out. And again, if that happens this year, it sets a precedent that there's zero reason to play that game. Greg Sankey's going to have to look at the SEC championship game outside of the financial aspect and go, should we keep this game? You would think when the first one was played between Alabama and Florida in 92 and Florida almost beat Alabama, you would have had that conversation then and gone, wait a minute. I know this ain't Greg Sankey, but you would have gone, wait a minute. This may not be great. The narrative is shifting, guys. Like everybody, oh, well, the SEC championship is a play-in and blah, blah, blah. At some point in time, that's not going to be true. At some point in time, because the landscape of college football is fluid and it changes so much, that's not going to be true. The committee, this is a human component. There's bias introduced into this, right? So at some point in time, if Alabama loses by 10 to Texas A&M in Atlanta, they beat Auburn, they beat Eastern Illinois, they lose by 10 to Texas A&M in Atlanta, or they lose by 10 to a Georgia in Atlanta, because that's the way the committee is going to justify that is good. Well, it kind of scrapes the head-to-head, right? It kind of washes that out. And BYU, why not just put them in there? Oh, there's not enough ACC teams. Maybe we should bump Miami up. Maybe Miami should bump up there. They did beat Notre Dame. Didn't they beat Notre Dame? Yeah. Alabama's sitting in a very sketchy spot. Now, again, there's 2 weeks of the regular season left, then conference championship week. You've got rivalry week coming up in 2 weeks. A lot of things are going to change, right? And I still firmly believe that it'll take care of itself. Something concretely will happen that will lock Alabama into the college football playoff, or something will concretely happen that will lock them out, such as losing the Iron Bowl. But my bigger issue is that this system we have is so broken. There's no integrity to it. there's too large of a human component, which means there's too much bias, way too much bias. It also gives the sports media a lot more power and influence, which is not something that we need in sports. Absolutely not. We don't need more of that in sports. And I know the Big Ten folks are going to go, well, the media is influenced on the SEC. The SEC folks are going to say the media is influenced for the Big Ten. Either way, the fact that these humans can scroll X on a Saturday after Alabama comes back and beats South Carolina at their place and see all the Alabama content creators, analysts, fans complaining about Alabama's run game, and then magically mention that as a metric that they pulled out of nowhere. Well, they're not running the ball very well, so we can't have them at number 9. That's not a coincidence. That's bias. They're throwing crap at the wall and seeing what sticks because there's no real metric. We're not privy to the selection process. There's supposed to be a formative process that's on paper that they go through, but we don't know what that is. We don't know what that looks like because they do it behind closed doors and we're not allowed to see it. It's an absolute mess, man. All of a sudden, rushing yards is a metric for making the college football playoff. Go fact check me. He said that shit. It's crazy. It's a mess, guys. It's a mess. I miss the BCS. Not that Alabama would be in the BCS title game, but again, I accept that Alabama's where they are because they've lost 2 games, one of which they could have won, one of which they had no business losing. I accept that. What I don't accept is inconsistencies from the College Football Playoff Committee and really blind guessing. Like I said, throwing crap at the wall. So, tell me what you think. I know a lot of you are going to have opinions about the SEC title game, differing opinions. That's fine. You can disagree with me. That is fine. Your opinion carries just as much water as mine does, which all of us is not very much because we're not the ones making those decisions. But I really want to hear what you have to think about the college football rankings. Do you feel like there's a vendetta? Do you feel like the College Football Playoff Committee is kind of cowering out of giving the SEC a 5th team in there? Because right now, Alabama would be that 5th team. Obviously, the goal here is just win. If Alabama wins, beats Eastern Illinois, beats Auburn, beats whoever in Atlanta, they're in, no doubt. The question is, if Alabama does all of that except Atlanta, what happens then? Any other year, I'd be like, well, they're in. I'm not so confident this year. I know everybody's going to point to that ACC championship last year, but there is zero reason to believe that the college football playoff committee is going to do anything with any type of consistency or logical rationale. Sound off in the comments below. While you're there, make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things. Thanks for sticking around with me, your boy Cotton. We'll be live talking about this more tomorrow night at 8 p.m. right here on YouTube. As always, say your prayers, read your Bibles, wash your hands, horns down, beat Auburn and LSU and Tennessee to Roll Tide.